Welcome to A Year of War and Peace. I'm your host, Brian E. Denton. A Year of War and Peace is a daily, year-long, chapter-by-chapter reading of and meditation on Leo Tolstoy's epic novel, War and Peace. In these videos and podcasts, you'll be treated to a free reading of one chapter per day of the novel, plus a reflective essay I've written individually tailored to that day's chapter. These readings are offered for free, though if you'd like to support me, you can do so in one of three ways. First, you could purchase my ebook, A Year of War and Peace. It features the entire novel, plus all of my reflective essays, and it's only $2.99 on Amazon.com. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Brian E. Denton. If you sign up there, you'll receive a sonnet once a month, plus a link to an ebook of my collected sonnets. Finally, if you like, you can make a one-time donation to my PayPal account. The email there is brianedenton@gmail.com. You can also use that email to contact me. I'd be happy to hear from you. Your support is greatly appreciated. Today's reading is chapter 35 of War and Peace, followed by a reflection on the same. Chapter 35. Prince Andrew stayed at Brünn with Bilibin, a Russian acquaintance of his in the diplomatic service. "Ah, my dear prince, I could not have a more welcome visitor," said Bilibin, as he came out to meet Prince Andrew. "Franz, put the prince's things in my bedroom," said he to the servant who was ushering Bolkonsky in. "So you're a messenger of victory, eh? Splendid. And I am sitting here ill, as you see." After washing and dressing, Prince Andrew came into the diplomat's luxurious study and sat down to the dinner prepared for him. Bilibin settled down comfortably beside the fire. After his journey in the campaign, during which he had been deprived of all the comforts of cleanliness and all the refinements of life, Prince Andrew felt a pleasant sense of repose among luxurious surroundings, such as he had been accustomed to from childhood. Besides, it was pleasant, after his reception by the Austrians, to speak, if not in Russian, for they were speaking French, at least with a Russian who would, he supposed, share the general Russian antipathy to the Austrians, which was then particularly strong. Bilibin was a man of 35, a bachelor, and of the same circle as Prince Andrew. They had known each other previously in Petersburg, but had become more intimate when Prince Andrew was in Vienna with Kutuzov. Just as Prince Andrew was a young man who gave promise of rising high in the military profession, so to an even greater extent Bilibin gave promise of rising in his diplomatic career. He was still a young man, but no longer a young diplomat, as he had entered the service at the age of 16, had been in Paris and Copenhagen, and now held a rather important post in Vienna. Both the foreign minister and our ambassador in Vienna knew him and valued him. He was not one of those many diplomats who are esteemed because they have certain negative qualities, avoiding doing certain things and speaking French. He was one of those who, liking work, knew how to do it, and despite his indolence, would sometimes spend a whole night at his writing table. He worked well, whatever the import of his work. It was not the question of what for, but the question how that interested him. What the diplomatic matter might be, he did not care, but it gave him great pleasure to prepare a circular, memorandum, or report skillfully, pointedly, and elegantly. Bilibin's services were valued not only for what he wrote, but also for his skill in dealing and conversing with those in the highest spheres. Bilibin liked conversation as he liked work, only when it could be made elegantly witty. In society, he always awaited an opportunity to say something striking, and took part in a conversation only when that was possible. His conversation was always sprinkled with wittily original, finished phrases of general interest. These sayings were prepared in the inner laboratory of his mind, in a portable form, as if intentionally, so that insignificant society people might carry them from drawing room to drawing room. And, in fact, Bilibin's witticisms were hawked about in the Viennese drawing rooms and often had an influence on matters considered important. His thin, worn, sallow face was covered with deep wrinkles, which always looked as clean and well washed as the tips of one's fingers after a Russian bath. The movement of these wrinkles formed the principal play of expression on his face. Now his forehead would pucker into deep folds, and his eyebrows were lifted. Then his eyebrows would descend, and deep wrinkles would crease his cheeks. His small, deep-set eyes always twinkled and looked out straight. "Well, now tell me about your exploits," said he. Bolkonsky, very modestly, without once mentioning himself, described the engagement and his reception by the Minister of War. "They received me and my news as one receives a dog in a game of skittles," said he in conclusion. Bilibin smiled, and the wrinkles of his face disappeared. "However, my dear," he remarked, examining his nails from a distance and puckering the skin above his left eye, "despite my high esteem for the Orthodox Russian army, I confess that your victory is not the most successful." He went on talking in this way in French, uttering only those words in Russian on which he wished to put a contemptuous emphasis. "Come now, you with all your force has fallen unfortunate Mortier in his one division, and even then Mortier slips through your fingers. Where's the victory?" "But seriously," said Prince Andrew, "we can at any rate say without boasting that it was a little better than at Ulm. Why didn't you capture just one marshal for us?" "Because not everything happens as one expects, or with the smoothness of a parade. We had expected, as I told you, to get at their rear by 7 in the morning, but had not reached it by 5 in the afternoon." "And why didn't you do it at 7 in the morning? You ought to have been there at 7 in the morning," returned Bilibin with a smile. "You ought to have been there at 7 in the morning." "Why did you not succeed in impressing on Bonaparte by diplomatic methods that he had better leave Genoa alone?" retorted Prince Andrew in the same tone. "I know," interrupted Bilibin. "You're thinking it's very easy to take Marshall sitting on a sofa by the fire. That is true. But still, why don't you capture him? So don't be surprised if not only the Minister of War, but also His Most August Majesty the Emperor and King Francis is not much delighted by your victory. Even I, a poor secretary of the Russian embassy, do not feel any need, in token of my joy, to give my Franz a thaler, or let him go with Liebenstein to the Prater. True, we have no Prater here." He looked straight at Prince Andrew, and suddenly unwrinkled his forehead. "It is now my turn to ask you why, mon cher," said Bolkonsky. "I confess I do not understand. Perhaps there are diplomatic subtleties here beyond my feeble intelligence, but I can't make it out. Mack loses a whole army. The Archduke Ferdinand and the Archduke Karl give no signs of life, and make blunder after blunder. Kutuzov alone at last gains a real victory, destroying the spell of the invincibility of the French, and the Minister of War does not even care to hear the details. That's just it, my dear fellow. You see, it's hurrah for the Tsar, for Russia, for the Orthodox Greek faith. All that is beautiful. But what do we, I mean the Austrian court, care for your victories? Bring us nice news of a victory by the Archduke Karl or Ferdinand. One archduke's as good as another, as you know. And even if it is only over a fire brigade of Bonaparte's, that will be another story, and we'll fire off some cannon. But this sort of thing done on purpose to vex us. The Archduke Karl does nothing. The Archduke Ferdinand disgraces himself. You abandon Vienna, give up its defenses. As much to say, heaven is with us, but heaven help you in your capital. The one general whom we all love, Schmidt, you expose to a bullet, and then you congratulate us on the victory? Admit that more irritating news than yours could not have been conceived. It's as if you had been done on purpose. Besides, suppose you did gain a brilliant victory. If even the Archduke Karl gained a victory, what effect would that have on the general course of events? It's too late now when Vienna is occupied by the French army. What? Occupied? Vienna occupied? Not only occupied, but Bonaparte is at Schönbrunn, and the Count, my dear Count Verbna, goes to him for orders." After the fatigues and impressions of the journey, his reception, and especially after having dined, Bolkonsky felt that he could not take in the full significance of the words he had heard. "Count Lichtenfels was here this morning," Bilibin continued, "and he showed me a letter in which the parade of the French in Vienna was fully described. Prince Murat et tout le tremblement. You see that your victory is not a matter for great rejoicing, and that you can't be received as a savior." "Really, I don't care about that. I don't care at all," said Prince Andrew, beginning to understand that his news of the battle before Krems was really of small importance in view of such events as the fall of Austria's capital. "How is it Vienna was taken? What of the bridge and its celebrated bridgehead and Prince Auersperg? We heard reports that Prince Auersperg was defending Vienna," he said. "Prince Auersperg is on our side of the river, and is defending us, doing it very badly, I think, but he is still defending us. But Vienna is on the other side. No, the bridge has not yet been taken, and I hope it will not be, for it is mined, and orders will be given to blow it up. Otherwise, we should long ago have been in the mountains of Bohemia, and you and your whole army have spent a bad quarter of an hour between two fires." "But still, this does not mean that the campaign is over," said Prince Andrew. "Well, I think it is. The big wigs here think so too, but they daren't say so. It will be as I said at the beginning of the campaign. It won't be your skirmishes at Durenstein or gunpowder at all that will decide the matter, but those who devised it," said Bilíbin, quoting one of his own mots, releasing the wrinkles on his forehead and pausing. "The question really is, what will come of the meeting between the Emperor Alexander and the King of Prussia in Berlin? If Prussia joins the Allies, Austria's hand will be forced and there will be war. If not, it is merely a question of settling where the preliminaries of the new Count Folmio are to be drawn up." "What an extraordinary genius!" Prince Andrew suddenly exclaimed, clenching his small hand and striking the table with it. "And what luck the man has!" "Bonaparte?" said Bilíbin, inquiringly, puckering up his forehead to indicate that he was about to say something witty. "Bonaparte?" he repeated, accentuating the U. "I think, however, now that he lays down laws for Austria at Schönbrunn, you will have to give it thanks to the U. I shall certainly adopt an innovation and call him simply Bonaparte without the U." "But joking apart," said Prince Andrew, "do you really think the campaign is over?" "This is what I think. Austria has been made a fool of, and she was not be used to it. She will retaliate. And she is fooled in the first place because her provinces have been pillaged. They say the Holy Russian army loots terribly. Her army is destroyed, her capital taken, and all this for the beaux yeux of his Sardinian Majesty. And therefore, this is between ourselves, I instinctively feel that we are being deceived. My instinct tells me of negotiations with France and projects for peace, a secret peace concluded separately." "Impossible!" cried Prince Andrew. "That would be too base." "If we live, we shall see," replied Bilíbin, his face again becoming smooth as a sign that the conversation was at an end. When Prince Andrew reached the room prepared for him and lay down in a clean shirt on the feather bed with its warmed and fragrant pillows, he felt that the battle of which he had brought tidings was far, far away from him. The alliance with Prussia, Austria's treachery, Bonaparte's new triumph, tomorrow's levee and parade, and the audience with Emperor Francis occupied his thoughts. He closed his eyes, and immediately a sound of cannonading, of musketry, and the rattling of carriage wheels seemed to fill his ears. And now and again, drawn out a thin line, the musketeers were descending the hill, the French were firing, and he felt his heart palpitating as he rode forward beside Schmidt with the bullets merrily whistling all around. He experienced tenfold the joy of living, as he had not done since childhood. He woke up. "Yes, that all happened," he said. And smiling happily to himself like a child, he fell into a deep, youthful slumber. All right, that concludes my reading of chapter 35. I'm now going to move right into the reflection. A Year of War and Peace, Day 35. The Flea Presumes. We believe we can measure the size of the universe. Using a method called the cosmic distance ladder, a method utilizing measuring techniques ranging from simple radar ranging to the more complex Cepheid variable approach, we now reckon the universe to be about 93 billion light-years in diameter. Our own corner of the universe, the Milky Way, is roughly 100,000 light-years across. Earth, that great rockeous orb we call home, boasts a surface area of about 197 million square miles, which, to our great misfortune, is just big enough to host a few million lawyers and politicians. Also on our planet, however, is a delightful 19th century novel called War and Peace, and in the 35th chapter of the English translation of that novel, there is a character named Prince Andrew Bolkonsky, who has recently arrived in Brünn. He lodges at Brünn with his friend Bilíbin, a Russian diplomat, and the two spend the chapter discussing the Russian and Austrian war effort against the mighty French army and its leader, Napoleon Bonaparte. Prince Andrew is quite pleased. He has arrived in Brünn with news of a Russian victory against the French that he himself took part in. Bilíbin is not so sanguine. It turns out Andrew's information is incomplete. Yes, the Russians have earned a victory over the French, but more importantly, the French now occupy Vienna. Prince Andrew, Tolstoy writes, began to understand that this news of the battle before Krems was really of small importance in view of such events as the fall of Austria's capital. This thought disturbs Andrew's mind. He falls from a relatively elated feeling to one of near despondency. His spirits are lifted once again, however, as he lays himself to bed with thoughts of his role in the battle against the French. It's useful to trace Prince Andrew's emotional circuit in this chapter. He starts out so happy and content. He's like the flea, working under the presumption that the blood he's drawn from his host is all the work that is ever to be done in the world. Then, when Andrew learns of the bigger picture, that the French enemy now occupies Vienna, all of a sudden his mood is radically changed for the worse. But what if you were to consider an even bigger perspective? What if Prince Andrew were to contemplate the 93 billion light years in diameter of the universe, and his infinitesimal place in it? What would he think then? Would he allow himself this wide range of emotion as he does in this chapter? Perhaps not. Daily meditation. How small a part of the boundless and unfathomable time is assigned to every man. It is soon swallowed up in the eternal. And how small a part of the whole substance, and how small a part of the universal soul, and on what small clod of earth thou creepest. Reflecting on all this, consider nothing to be great, except to act as thy nature leads, and to endure that which the common nature brings. Marcus Aurelius, The Meditations. Thanks for reading today. Remember that if you'd like to support me, you can do so either by purchasing the ebook, A Year of War and Peace, becoming a patron at Patreon, or making a one-time donation at PayPal. The links are below. Tomorrow, we'll be reading and reflecting on Chapter 36 of War and Peace. Until then, I hope you'll join me, and take care of yourselves and of others.